Next up, we have every single Warhammer faction re-explained from Bricky. This is part 1. Last time around, we got to Bricky going into a bit of chaos, just diving deep into Slaanesh and gushing over Necrons. And nothing I said there is technically inaccurate. And means nothing more than exactly what YouTube-friendly ways I could definitely intend that as, and nothing else. More importantly, though, we're going to jump right into it. I'm pretty sure we have Nurgle up next. So, this one's on the nose, considering I'm literally just getting over being really freaking sick. Hey, yeah, timing, fun. Moving on, let's see where this goes. And by goes, I mean, I think it's probably still the same lore. Unlike a few of the other factions, like the Necrons, big changes for Chaos haven't really happened. Unless I'm wrong, which is entirely possible.
Third of the Chaos Gods is the one of acceptance of rot and pestilence, the grandfather himself, Papa Nurgle. Nurgle is the exact opposite of Tzeentch, where Tzeentch believes in...
Yep, Bricky finding the good art.
change and hope for a future. Nurgle believes in stagnation and the end of everything. At one point or another, we will all decay. We will all rot and we will all end. And with a sacred number of 7, every single thing,
Lucky
pestilence, boil, and everything in between comes under the great shadow and girth of Nurgle himself. For Nurgle, the plight of mortals is his beer and wine. And no matter how solid life might be, everything will decay in the end. In the creation of life, there must be an end to that life. And nobody has more creations to end lives than Grandfather Nurgle himself. Everybody...
Yeah, but Nurgle's also the living in death, or like not quite death, but it should be dead, but you survive well beyond when you should, and rot and decay without actually dying, and just ugh. Because Bricky's more on the side of the Chaos Gods have positive traits, where I think I'm more on the side of they could, but they don't use them because that's not where they get the power. There's debate about how that works, and that's one of the things I have brought up more often than once where I do disagree with him on, if only because there's disagreement in the freaking writers and how they approach it in Warhammer 40k novels. So yeah, it's not even a disagreement Games Workshop is a problem for, because they keep it going.
Boil. Every blemish, every pus-filled wound and disease, every rot and every plague is kept and concocted by Nurgle. This...
Also, there's just a little note at the bottom of the screen, and I kind of love this. Yeah, you keep listing them, Burchard. I'm not putting any of that on screen, and I'm glad for that, because you've already put up enough that if you were more Nurgly inclined, you could find it. I would probably throw up on my camera. I would like to avoid that. I don't want to do that again.
This, humorously, keeps Nurgle as a jovial god. He is full of life and laughter, and by creating as many diseases as he possibly can, he shares that joy with mortals. I mean, his envoy is the great unclean one. And look at how happy he is. And there's a lot of him to love. A fear of death
a little there.
In general is feeding Nurgle. All disease makes him stronger, but to pray for salvation for a wounded loved one is to feed Nurgle. The timeless and inevitable fear that one day you will rot and decay is what gives him strength. The Peloton won't feed Nurgle. Licking the doorknob on a public bathroom certainly does.
I want to say that's so incredibly stupid a statement that no one would ever do that. I really want to say that. I can't. And hate everything about this. People lick some things they really shouldn't, man.
However, should you embrace your grandfather's gifts, you may find an end to your pain. Maybe. All mortal followers...
Oh, I love that. I love that moment right there where he's like, maybe. Because the entire thing about Nurgle is you're still just as in as much pain, but your mind breaks down and decays to the point where you think you like it. Frankly, he's probably the patron saint of dementia because it's mental decay to the point where you love the pain. That's just, it's good. Also, I have seen these arts for Tzeentch and Nurgle, but I haven't seen this one for Khorne very often. I'm assuming it's Khorne. It's neat.
The Chaos Gods found themselves there in one way or another, either through the direct worship or the slow corrupting of their souls. But those that take Nurgle's gifts and embrace the decay of their bodies may end up being chosen among his few as a faithful servant. In doing so, you will be free of the pain caused by Nurgle's ailments, and you may even find yourself just as jovial and happy as he is. Maybe. His enemies shall wither and die. His allies shall wither and die. The universe and all within it shall wither and die. And when the great corruption has settled over the land and permeated the very foundations of reality itself, then shall the Lord of all rise from the rot and ruin, spread his arms wide to reclaim all of his dutiful children. Those were the three major Chaos Gods for a very long time. And
now we get to Slash. I would have sworn we did Slash. Oh, because the overlap with some of the others. Yeah. Yeah, this is art of Nurgle with a beard. I've seen him around. It's pretty cool. I don't know why they chose a beard, though. I don't think I've seen any real hair on his models. Which is kind of fucked up because there's entire tumors that grow hair inside the body as well. Let's stop thinking about this.
Emboldened by war and death on a galactic scale, ever present but now fact on the suffering of a galaxy. One race, for a while, was able to elude the pull of chaos, an advanced race of psychically attuned aliens whose master over the physical world was so strong that chaos could not glean from them the morsels of power they once had, or so they couldn't, not for a long while. 60 million years ago, in an attempt to combat the Necrons in Catan, the old ones...
Oh yeah, this is some of the first edition art, isn't it? No, it had to be later than that because the face of the Eldar still looks remotely human. Apparently some of the Rogue Trader Eldar, their faces did not look human. Although maybe that was a later change for 6th edition. I've seen some where initially they were uncanny valley close to human, but not actually human looking. This one still looks like a human face on an Eldar body.
Made a new species, one with innate power in the warp and the ability to harness it with a mastery that was unseen by so many others. A mastery so powerful, the Necrons retreated to sleep in order to wait it out. It was no longer...
I'm just looking at this and all I can say is 80s, 90s. Yeah, someone just was listening to a power ballad from some kind of heavy metal rock group, but with a slow tune. It's drawing out the vowels. They were listening to that when painting this. There's no way around that. I will not hear anyone say otherwise.
Longer a galaxy to be ruled by them, but instead begin the age of the...
Oh, it says Eldar. Oh, he got the freaking weird...
Are a race of pointed-eared humanoids that are all
Yeah, Harlequins, man. I have found painting a Harlequin and just thinking, what if they were cowboys, actually works well on their entire aesthetic. Because they're a common one. Do you want to actually try and paint checkers? Don't. Just don't do that to yourself.
Psychically attuned to the warp. If we're being meta here,
these
are space elves, and these elves ruled the
galaxy on a shelf.
At the time the Necrons went to sleep and humanity began to rise.
And because I've been saying this for all the others, everything he just said is mostly the canon, sort of. And it will be said in every damn video, and probably every video you ever do involving 40K. Anything about what happened at that time period is subject to, we don't actually know. The people who are alive and still remember are not saying shit. And the people who were alive and don't remember don't sometimes know if they remember or not because they're Necrons, and they are very much of the... Is it correct or did my mind degrade style? I don't know. Drazen might know, but he would also lie because it's funny. Yeah. There's a lot of debate about what actually happened. If they were in charge, if the Necrons had won, because technically they had won the war in heaven, but then the Eldar won the war in heaven, but they were on the opposite end. So if both of them are true, neither is true, except maybe it was because there was an alliance. Maybe there wasn't. There's a lot that could have happened. And there's a lot of competing source material because Games Workshop likes the ambiguity and may or may not be looking at overlapping universes interacting with each other, which is why some things can get lost in the warp because it went to a different universe when might have arrived somewhere else. So you can actually have eventually two versions of a same Primarch, so they can sell a corrupted and uncorrupted version of same guy. Just throwing it out there. It would make money, so eventually it'll probably happen.
The Eldar's empire was
that is so pretty.
And lasted for longer than any other galactic power that we know of. Their understanding of all things was exceptional. With every single one of them being psychers, they had the ability.
This is the 8th edition Codex. I was going to say thumbnail, but the box art for the Codex. Oh, it's not even the box art. It's the Codex cover art. And damn, does it look good. You see the high detail here, but then you get down here and you see the more slashing style of art showing the different styles. It's so good. When Games Workshop hires artists, they get really damn good artists, both for their books, for the paintings, for the models. Their style is very specific. And maybe not my favorite, but it looks good. And Valerian, they have abandoned the Clone Grim plotline is a crime. Sort of. I mean, Ynnari were from 3rd or 2nd edition, and they came back in 8th. So abandon is probably a strong word. More like indefinitely put on hold, with everything else indefinitely put on hold. In fact, you should just assume every plot line is indefinitely put on hold until it's not.
To master the warp and use it to their advantage. See, being a psyker is basically like being a wizard, or I guess in this case it's more of a sorcerer, since you are born with the gifts as opposed to
He's not wrong. Yeah, it's closer to a sorcerer. This is going to be D&D coded for anyone who doesn't get that. When he says wizard, that's someone who learns their skill, learns magic. Sorcerer is someone born with it. And technically, they'd also have sorcerers in universe who are actually closer to warlocks because they get the power from demons. Yeah, and honestly, this would all be kind of a... Why are you bringing it up? Those are two different franchises, except 40K has entered into Magic the Gathering, which is owned by Hasbro, which is also the guys who do D&D, so I'm depressing myself right now. Let's stop.
Learning them. In order to utilize your psychic abilities, however, you must then reach into the other dimension, into the warp, into hell for that power. So if you were to say, cast Fireball,
that guy is tall.
Would reach into the warp,
is he doing the Black Knight?
Strength to rewrite reality to then cast Fireball. Now, you might think to yourself, doesn't that mean if you are opening up a power to the warp, you may create a lot of risk to yourself because of all the horrible things we just talked about in the warp?
Yes. I'm not sure about some novels, like more with the crime series, but I honestly wish some of the Psyker gone wrong was more visible in 40K. Because right now, there's Perils of the Warp where you take damage. I wish there was actually a model you could say, now suddenly we have demons fighting everyone. Is it a good move? No. But I still wish that was something you could do.
Yes! However, in Warhammer 40K, willpower is a real, tangible thing.
And not enough people have it.
In its own right, it can be weaponized. Being strong of will means being strong of soul. And being strong of soul means you can resist the pull of the warp that much more. A more inexperienced psyker opens up a hole into the warp.
Dark Tide. Fun game. I suck at it. Fun game, though.
Warp that is large, and that hole widens to get more power, allowing evil things to get in. A powerful psyker is able to open a very small hole, but with immense force, to get the same amount of power with less risk. The Eldar are master psychers. Every single one of them can call upon the warp, and over millions of years they have perfected it so much so that they can weave structures out of it. In some species in the galaxy, they utilize the warp itself.
Ooh, when did this come out? 2 weeks ago? Yeah, he probably recorded this before the current kerfuffle with the Eldar creating things from the warp. Old lore, it was kind of just assumed it was just warp stuff brought into reality, which, I mean, was kind of hand-waved away in its own right because warp stuff should only exist limited term and it needs to be sustained, where the Eldar stuff was very permanent. New lore is it was using the warp to use reality stuff in reality with the help of warp stuff, making reality stuff in the shape they want. I'm highly oversimplifying it, but there's an entire schmuck up there, and honestly, I don't care. I truly don't. Because, frankly, the initial one was also kind of an asshole to start with, so just changing how the asshole works and doesn't actually change the lore too much.
For interstellar travel. The Eldar ain't having any of that noise. How about we utilize a fancy alternative mode of travel that is substantially safer than the old ones created called the Webway? What about dying? Miss me with that. We no longer age. And if we do, we can just be reborn like that. Food, water, materials, we make things out of distilled warp essence itself. We sing unreality into cathedrals to dine in. What truly could the Eldari Empire possibly fear?
I just want to know what Bricky or his editor was thinking when he asked him, okay, I want you to draw a version of me as a pointy-eared Eldari. Just make it happen. Stabbing myself in the back. Do it. I want to hear what that is. I know I will never hear it, but that is one of those, you want to do what? Okay, just how much does he pay me again? Type moments that I think would be hilarious, man. Oh, God. Freaking space elves. It's almost all your fault. The rest is Lorgar's.
The Eldari Empire's biggest fear was themselves. With a society so perfect, they wanted for naught, and this led them down dark and dangerous paths. When the base functions of society are no longer a problem for you, you tend to experiment. Perhaps the medium rare steak on your plate would be better if it was elf?
Huh. See, this is actually some of the even older art where the faces are much taller. In newer art of the Eldar, and this isn't even the oldest, where it still looks like a human face, but you can see right here, this is one of the, not newer, but after they started making them look slightly more human, because it still has human features, but it's longer and taller than a human head would be, which is why they had the tall cone hats, because their heads would fit them better. But now human heads and Eldar heads are almost interchangeable, minus the pointy ears. But especially in the older you get in 40K, the less human Eldar look. And frankly, it's kind of cool looking. But I understand also why.
Meat. Hey, I'm not saying we should make cannibalism legal, but like, what's the issue with a little taste?
He's not even joking about this, by the way. This is literally all stuff that they are completely in there for. So if anyone thinks he's like, oh, he's taking a joke, how crazy. No. He's being literal right now. I don't think he's intending to. No, he probably is. He's just playing it off as if it's a joke for YouTube. But no. All of this is exactly the kind of shit that happened in this time period. And I'm pretty sure there are bits of lore, but I make a point never to actually look at them.
Violent sports is one thing, but how come we don't do sports to the death? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if both participants are willing and clear about it, like, what really is the problem there?
Or if one participant wasn't willing, but we'll just get him a new body in a few years after he stops screaming.
You know, art is in the eye of the viewer,
and if the viewer is made to keep staring at it until their eyeballs dry out, and we have to keep moistening them so they can keep screaming because it's part of the process as well. Art in the eye of the beholder, and we're going to make sure you behold it forever, is perfect art. Everything I just said is so incredibly fucked up that it perfectly encapsulates exactly the kind of shit he's not allowed to say on YouTube, and frankly, I probably shouldn't be either. Yeah.
Considered art is completely up to the concept of one's own interest. A canvas adorned with the blood of a man wronged is truly the visual poetry that our society needs.
I hate this painting with a fashion because I've seen people make this kind of shit. Specifically, though, it wasn't blood, it was Andy Warhol peeing. This might sound like I'm making a joke. It's not. It's on the wall in Pittsburgh. Yep.
Hedonism. With a slow and consistent hedonism, the Eldar slid backwards into debauchery of the sort I cannot discuss on this YouTube video. Murder on stage, delicacies and drugs distilled from one another, the trade of slaves and concubines, and much much worse. The Eldar physiology has their emotions heightened, and they can feel more than a human does. So while it can provide lows of pure despair, it can also provide greater highs than you have ever known. And swinging between the two of them was the Eldar game. The Warp took notice of this heavily, and it began to react. On a galactic scale, the debauchery and the hedonism of the Eldar race caused levels of warp storm so pronounced and so volatile that it cut off interstellar travel for all those who used it.
And he's mentioned the biggest, craziest part of 40k lore that never gets addressed because it's part of the things that will never be addressed, probably. Like, I will joke around about alternate timelines, alternate Primarchs, all of this stuff, how there might be layers of reality, and it might even be interacting between alternate timelines where one thing happened here, and they cross over, but they're just similar enough and they're just distant enough where the changes are that you can't notice it, so maybe it's a compounding universe. But this is the one thing they're never going to get into. This is what he's talking about in the Imperium side, is right after the Men of Iron destroyed the Golden Age of humanity, and then there was well, everything broke apart after that. Right now, he's talking about hey, if the Eldar were the galaxy-spanning conquerors of multiple millennia, and then on top of millennia, but actual millions of years, how come Earth could have a golden age where they control the galaxy and they got everywhere and they kind of just didn't interact? Yeah. This is one of those internal consistencies that is a problem. And it's one of the reasons I believe that 40k is intentionally vague, because these are two empires who both claim to have the exact same claim on everything, traveling in the exact same circles. Maybe not one went warp travel, one went, well, we think it was warp travel in the Golden Age, but for all we know, it was not. Who knows? Maybe it was time travel. They have that. They did that. There was a ship that did it in the stories, in lore. But this right here is an internal inconsistency that might be intentional, might be not. It might also show that there was overlapping fields. Maybe they were allies, maybe they weren't. You don't know. And 40k does not write this because it's telling you what the high benchmark of the highest power level would be. Because the Necrons can be there because they don't remember their benchmark. Humanity could, but the only people who would know that are the Emperor and maybe anyone in the Black Library, which also explicitly won't, because that's kind of run by the clowns, so you can assume they're going to lie. Also, yeah, Black Library is literally an in-universe library run by clowns. That's not even a joke. That's a literal statement. And they're out of universe publishing arm. Yeah.
Communications between planets was removed, and a nightmarish era of Old Night began. This continued for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. The Eldar all but removed from the problems being caused as they entered heights of more and more ecstasy. They needed more and more and more. Nothing was ever enough. More murder, more torture. It's art, it's delicacies, it's life. This silence offends Slaanesh.
That other Chaos God I conveniently didn't mention. Yeah.
Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, she who thirsts, the god of unspeakable excess, is our fourth Chaos God, with the sacred number of 6 adorning their title. Slaanesh is a bit of a tricky one, because with our other 3 Chaos
I'm not even sure what I'm
gods,
looking at, and I'm going to make sure it stays that way, because if I find out, it's always worse.
Desires. But for Slaanesh, that desire is how they get their power. The words to be used would be decadence, pleasure, perfection, passion, excess, and many others. The pursuit
always
of
the excess.
more. The want to do more, experience more, become more. That's what gives Slaanesh their gifts. A lot of people believe that Slaanesh is something that originates with sex, specifically, and it makes sense why they assume that. The visuals of Slaanesh patrons are all very lithe and sexual, but they are also intentionally androgynous to appear attractive to a variety of intrigues.
Gore shit imaginable? Oh, gayest. Okay, that makes more sense. Hey, a fan with too much time here as well, in regard to what you were saying concerning mankind and the Eldar. And also, for anyone wondering, a fan with too much time is someone who has done significant research into both Star Wars, obviously, with what he's done, and 40K. So I take his rulings on what he says pretty seriously, even if I don't agree all the time. Ruling the universe at the same time, you have to understand the kind of rulership and the stage of the Empire where they were in contact with each other. The Eldar did their actual physical conquering thousands and thousands, maybe even millions of years before humanity's rise. The Eldar grew bored with warfare and undeveloped species and couldn't offer them a challenge. Due to their post-scarcity, there was no actual resource drive to make them conquer or expand. And so, after a while, they simply stopped. Yes, but the problem is, while that makes perfect sense, considering the heights of passion they were in, there was probably one going, I want to bring more people in. So the entire Dark Eldar stuff makes sense prior to the fall, prior to when the Dark Eldar were a thing themselves. A lot of what happens, though, is how were they interacting? Did they interact? Were they just isolationists at that point? Or did they have a claim to everything, but they didn't enforce it because they were bored? We are kind of assuming that one, but we don't actually know because 40K explicitly leaves that unintelligible. It's why people can write interesting things about it, but it's always non-canon, even if it makes more sense than canon.
However, to think that Slaanesh specifically derives from sex would be mistaken. While it is true.
Oh, he's going to bring up the planet inside the warp that's explicitly one of the Slaanesh followers who was more a fan of gluttony, because they got so fat they became the planet people were on. Just huddled in a fetal position because he's that obese.
That a lot of humanity's actions can relate to getting laid, and Slaanesh is the dark prince of desire. It's more on the lines of feeling an excess of an emotion. It is excessive touch.
I have no idea what this background is, and it's weird.
And desire, and a lot of that has to do with sex. That's why it looks like sex, but it's more than just that. A patron of the arts.
Bricky, I know this is supposed to be excess, but I just take offense at patron of the arts and then this much Funko Pop in it, because this is not a patron of the arts. This is a cry for help. Specifically, whenever there's a small earthquake and this somehow tumbles down and traps someone underneath it. I am both impressed that they could keep it this clean and terrified that they had the time to make it this clean. I need to stop looking at this.
May feed Slaanesh, one that aspires to become the perfect chef or master of.
For anyone who doesn't recognize this, and one that, if you don't, that actually pains me. John Cleese, Monty Python. He's awesome. Look it up.
Of their craft, and the sheer pursuit of that alone will feed Slaanesh. Whiplash is Slaanesh's absolute favorite film. Videos where people beat Elden Ring on a dance pad feed Slaanesh.
There are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job.
No, I can think of it. You're hired. Also, this entire movie was this guy being an asshole and basically gaslighting this guy into believing he was doing better for it. But at the same time, it's just self-destructive, and his entire life kind of sucked. But I don't think that's what most people got from it.
But is there a line?
No, man, no.
This also moves into the concept of feeling. Sensation is a majorly Slaanesh-coded thing. It might start off feeling good, but then you get to play around a little bit, you know? You play with a little bit of pain. Light pain might not be enough, so you might want more. Or inflicting the pain could be your jam. Music can increase to volumes that may hurt your ears, and even then that might not be enough.
He's actually explicitly referencing the Noise Marines. I mean, they said it was music, but no, it wasn't. It really wasn't. And that's not an out-of-universe thing. It explicitly, no one likes the Noise Marines except the Noise Marines. But they work. And yes, for anyone wondering, that movie was actually named Whiplash. It's why he made the joke about it being the favorite one. I can't stand that movie because I want to punch so many people in the face whenever I saw it. And I mean that as both the actors in there, because they did an amazing job at portraying things I don't like. I mean, those actors did an amazing job at something I just don't like. But everyone who looks at it going like, this is the life I want. And I'm just sitting here going, you want to alienate everyone around you to achieve a goal that ultimately has no fulfillment to yourself? Yeah. Also, perfect metaphor right now for Slaanesh. It actually makes perfect sense. I think it's perfectly on the nose for Bricky to do it. And perfect, I can only say that so many times. It's like Slaanesh is part of perfection or something.
More.
Obsession with
you must have more. Many of the disciples of Slaanesh carry a demonic form in their lithe grace.
Yeah. Although, while the excess is kind of the Slaanesh thing, it's kind of all of the gods. All of the chaos gods are excess. Slaanesh is the one who has it as a keyword, but it's really all of them. More disease, more plotting, more blood, more war. Anarchy is more anarchy, but that's more Age of Sigmar, and they haven't quite brought that over into 40k yet, but it might just be, maybe they will, who knows. And Van, you mentioned, wait, Cosmic said media literacy is dead and I'm going to resurrect the damn thing. Good luck, man. Uphill battle, but not impossible. And Fan said, you are right, they do leave the part more ambiguous. However, there are lots of clues, especially in the Eldar book, where the Eldar reflect on who and what they were and what mankind was to them. Ooh, I actually missed that part. Mankind was a diverting and interesting xenospecies to the Eldar that was making kind of vaguely cool stuff and may become personally interesting in a few thousand more years. That's a way to look at it. It wasn't that mankind was not powerful, it's more that the Eldars simply didn't have a distinct interest in things that interested us. And Cosmic just responded, try and stop me. No, I refuse. Fan, I agree with what you're taking there, but I also think a lot of that is current writers doing that, while the Games Workshop method might be intentional ambiguity. I believe what you're doing is what most of the writers would do, but not all of them. Some of them might say bigger, some of them might say smaller. I think yours is what most would probably agree with, and I think makes the most sense in a logical framework. But when you have the warp involved, logical frameworks can easily stop. Because there's novels that explicitly contradict each other. Contradict, not contradict. Although both technically work. I mentioned as well, fans said, because of this, we largely did not compete. The Eldar did, sorry, not Eldar, Eldar, older version, did not enjoy disgrace or failure, so by the time mankind got strong enough that fighting them might risk disgrace or failure, yeah, they just didn't. And now fans apologizing for the novel. Honestly, no, I don't mind. I enjoy getting other people's takes. Frankly, I'm surprised Cosmic and Fan haven't started tying into each other, because right now they could... If I can get Fan and Cosmic Void into a podcast to just geek out on things, I would just be sitting there in the background going, my work here is done. That'd be awesome.
The Keeper of Secrets is his chosen envoy, and their movements are a blur of dance and pain with an aura all the more fatal. They dance and sing, but there's always a form of malice behind every action they take. An alluring gaze that will pull you in right before the demonic entity can crush you in that.
Also, this is just going to suck. This art right now is for a bunch of models that have been written out of the Codex. Specifically, this one back here riding the monster. These chariots, they don't exist anymore. Games Workshop put them into Legends, which kind of sucks because they're awesome.
Grip. Slaanesh's palace has 6 layers surrounding it, and one of them is the excess of gluttony, where the participant finds themselves in a beautiful banquet full of the most delicious foods imaginable. Tables of delicacies and rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face.
Tags. I'm not going to like anything that's coming up in the next word when this clears up, am I? Oh, no.
They're aware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet themselves. That is one of the 6 layers of Slaanesh's palace. This was the ecstasy that the Eldar civilization indulged in for millennia, and did so at a monumental scale that they created a god from it. Find pleasure in every moment, indulge in every whim, let lesser races feel the burden of their crude lives. We are beyond such concerns or worries. Every power is ours to use, every sensation ours to experience. We are truly masters of the galaxy, and all others exist only to satisfy our curiosities.
I know this is supposed to be the old Eldar, but damn if this isn't exactly the entire mantra of the Dark Eldar now. Granted, the Dark Eldar are more intentionally believing this when they're explicitly all just victims of Slaanesh, but some of them have been victims so long they don't actually realize that and they just like what they were doing anyways. Yeah.
We have earned our position of power. Let us forever taste.
Earned. Earned is a very interesting word considering Necrons are a thing, and the winner of that is debatable.
The fruits of such achievement. Time itself is ours to command. We are eternal.
Oh, jeez. The game... Oh, why? Why? Why would you put this in here?
With the birth of Slaanesh, the
That is now a phrase I will have in my head for the rest of my life. Thank you, Bricky. I will not regret this. I definitely won't. I'm not going to be sitting here going, why? I got so distracted that Fan and Cosmic were talking back here, and I missed all of it because I just got stuck on the Goon God comment.
The Eldari Empire ceased to be. A catastrophic event so horrible that the warp ripped a hole permanently in our reality.
Based on the previous comments and everything he just said right now, something has come to mind that would not be YouTube appropriate. So I'm going to leave that afterbirth to the side. More importantly, Fan, you mentioned, the last thing I will say is that you also have to remember that the Eldar humanity's rise and fall happened in one weekend. It's not like a long stretch of time for them or their empire. Yep. Oh yeah, completely. But also with their hyperfixation on extremes, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people who were doing the extremes to others, which is why the non-competition was weird, because it seems like the kind of thing they would do just to do it because it's new.
A fissure forever known as the Eye of Terror. With the sudden inhalation of this god's largest breath, the Eldari souls are a currency to be now collected by she who thirsts. Trillions of Eldar died in an instant. Slaanesh gorging on their souls to satisfy his palate. 99.9% of their entire species died, and the rest are doomed to a fate worse than death. For Slaanesh now stakes a claim on each and every Eldar soul. From the moment they pass on, an eternity of torment awaits them.
Everything I'm about to say is moderately speculative, but the eternity of torment, with how souls work in Age of Sigmar, which is tangentially connected directly to 40k, in the sense that the old world explicitly had links between 40k and fantasy, and then fantasy became AOS. It's disconnected up until it's not. I'm wondering if one of the things you can do in AOS, which is getting souls back from chaos, usually to use for yourself instead, because you're also evil and you're a Marathi, you might also run into that kind of thing where, has anyone done that in the 40k side? I don't know. It hasn't really been a thing that I'm aware of right now. It's denying souls, but once they're gone, they're gone. Maybe. Technically, the Emperor did offer Mortarion the get out of jail free card, and Mortarion turned him down. Not that he couldn't, he said no. But the offer was made. In 8th edition, I think. So maybe it's a thing here. I don't know.
Remaining Eldar devote their entire lives to stopping this eventuality. Their dying race so devoted to saving themselves from the Dark Prince. And, in doing so, have found very creative ways.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I actually thought he was going to go in the Dark Eldar, but no, he's going to the Craftworld Eldar next. That said, I'm pretty sure this is where I should stop because we already got to the goon for the goon god. I think we're at the point where this is safe to not do more. And Cosmic Void, you mentioned, it's kind of like the rise of the U.S. compared to the Roman Empire in a way. The Romans wouldn't think too much of it until suddenly F-16s. I mean, to be fair, F-16s would actually take off. If they said F-35, but they would find out when one of them crashed into the freaking Colosseum. You guys know the deal. There's a link below. Bricky's doing a really good job of bringing up a lot of interesting information and a lot of details that are important. He's going into some of those interactions between the different factions and tying them together and pointing out how there are very cool consistencies. I think the best part I like right now is bringing in people from chat who are super knowledgeable. I'm talking about Cosmic and Fanwood right now, and getting their takes on some of these interesting aspects. 40K has been around so long that it's not just the information itself that's cool, but it's the debate around it and getting to find out how people take it, because there are alternate takes, which is hard to do in fiction because normally you have a right answer. 40K, you have multiple answers, and all of them on the test could be wrong. You don't know. Because the people writing it, the initial everyone is gone. At least I think everyone initially involved is gone at this point. I could be mistaken. Either way, though, you guys know the deal. Link below. Initial video. Hit it up. Bricky's doing an awesome job, and I'm enjoying just getting to see his take on this now that he's had way more exposure to 40K overall. It's really fun. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.